Hey everyone, today's video is about calendars. D.Marble seemed pretty confused and pissed about the calendars and the date of the first day of the new year in his New Year hoax video. Let's watch a few seconds of it.
And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. Now let's focus on that phrase, the whole world. Some individuals feel that they're exceptional in that they can escape this whole idea of being deceived like everyone else. Like there's no way that anyone can pull a fast one on them, get one over on them. You know, what I'll talk about briefly in this video is New Year's. Now, if I understand correctly, ancient civilizations, they pretty much based their societies on their agriculture, their growing seasons. They knew throughout the year there were 4 seasons. You know, there's your season where you'll grow, your season where you'll harvest, there's your season where you'll need to store your crops, because there's a season that also comes where there aren't going to be any crops growing because it's too cold for that. Point where a lot of people who've looked into ancient cosmology dating up to recent history would acknowledge that for the most part we don't really know what year it is. Time has been adjusted so many times throughout history. The calendar has been changed so many times throughout history, where it used to be on a cycle where they would have each month broken down into a specific segment, and then time would accumulate so each year, and then come to a point to where maybe after, I believe, which makes sense because March is the time where spring starts to roll around again. That's when daylight savings time happens, okay? Longer daylight hours are occurring. This makes more sense as March possibly being the actual new year than December, because if we go back to looking at what the ancients observed as far as how they would cycle throughout a year, their new season of growth would occur in the springtime. Okay, during the dead of winter, December 31st or so, bears are still in hibernation, squirrels have already gathered their nuts and they're in hiding. Okay, plants aren't growing right now, the leaves have already fallen off the trees. Okay, a couple months from now in March, okay, leaves are going to start growing on the trees, the crops are going to start to grow again, animals are going to be coming out of hibernation, animals will start to reproduce again. Animals aren't reproducing right now, the birds are flown south for the winter. Okay, it just makes more sense that March would be the beginning of the new year as opposed to December, and it's also indicated that December is the 10th month because we go 7, 8, 9, 10, December, DEC, Deca, December, 10th, 11, January, 12, February, and March, the first month.
If you want to see the whole video, it's linked in the description. Already, we all got deceived that people made the 1st January to the New Year's Day, but the Romans had it in March, which makes for him more sense because they're spring. Yeah, right. I thought we should take a short look how calendars were invented and how we got the calendar we use today. Although the Gregorian calendar has become established worldwide over time, even today's calendars are not the same all over the world. But first we need to take a look back in time. After humans reached the settled form of existence, they discovered simple laws and natural processes such as the change of seasons or the periodic movements of celestial bodies. The very accurate determination of the sun and star positions as well as the phases of the moon are part of calendar buildings, such as temples and numerous megalithic installations. For example, the gates of circular enclosures were aligned at the exact position marked by the sunrise of the winter solstice from the center of the planet. Important data such as new moons, equinoxes and the winter and summer solstice were recorded and had ritual significance in many early cultures. The development of different calendar systems by astronomical observation can be classified as one of the first and most important scientific achievements of early civilizations. They can be summarized in 4 larger groups: solar and lunar calendars, lunisolar calendar as mixed form, and stellar calendars. The solar calendars are based on the course of the Earth around the Sun. That they are called Sun and not Earth calendar is due to our falsified perception that the Sun is moving in the sky even though the Earth is actually spinning around the Sun. The Gregorian calendar is such a solar calendar. Lunar calendars calculate the month and year based on the moon phases and are among the oldest existing calendars of humanity. This is obvious since the moon was the easiest and clearest guide to calendar calculation. The new month began when the new light, the new moon, reappeared in the sky. The lunar year is more difficult to calculate because it's 12 months but 11 days shorter than the solar year. The Islamic calendar, for example, used in some Islamic countries alongside the Gregorian calendar, is a lunar calendar. It's consisting 12 months in a year of 354 or 355 days. The lunisolar calendar is a mixed form. Its months are based on the moon, but the year is determined by the sun. This means, for example, from one spring to the next, or from one solstice to the next. There are two solstices within 1 year, the winter solstice on December 21st or 22nd, beginning of winter, and the summer solstice of June 21st, beginning of summer. On these days, the sun reaches its greatest distance from the celestial equator. From then on, it changes its direction of motion and approaches in the equator again. The Hebrew calendar is a lunisolar calendar. It directs its months after the moon phases, but leap years are added to adapt to the solar year. The stellar calendar is based on the current state of the various stars, with the sun and the moon playing a minor role. For example, a year does not start with the reappearance of the moon, but of a certain star. The old Egyptians, for example, marked the beginning of the new year by the heliacal rising of the star Sirius and the Nile flood. The early Roman calendar consisted of 10 months and 304 days, with each new year beginning at the vernal equinox, was, according to tradition, created by Romulus, the founder of Rome, in the 8th century BC. A later king, Numa Pompilius, is credited with adding the months of Januarius and Februarius. Over the centuries, the calendar fell out of sync with the sun, and in 46 BC, the Emperor Julius Caesar decided to solve the problem by consulting with the most prominent astronomers and mathematicians of his time. He introduced the Julian calendar, which closely resembles the more modern Gregorian calendar that most countries around the world use today. As part of his reform, Caesar instituted January 1st as the first day of the year, partly to honor the month's namesake, Janus, the Roman god of beginnings, whose two faces allowed him to look back into the past and forward into the future. Romans celebrated by offering sacrifices to Janus and presents to each other. However, the Julian year is compared to the solar year by 11 minutes and 40 seconds shorter, so that the deviation in the 14th century was already more than 7 days. In medieval Europe, Christian leaders temporarily replaced January 1st as the first day of the year with days carrying more religious significance, such as December 25th, the birth of Jesus, and March 25th, the feast of the Annunciation. But in 1582, Pope Gregory XIII reformed the calendar system. To compensate for the deviation from the solar year, 10 days were skipped from October 4th, 1582, and counted directly on October 15, 1582. In addition, improved leap day rules were introduced to counteract the deviations. Every year that is exactly divisible by 4 is a leap year, except for years that are exactly divisible by 100. But these centurial years are leap years if they are exactly divisible by 400. For example, the years 1700, 1800 and 1900 are not leap years, but the year 2000 is. Pope Gregory XIII also re-established January 1st as the New Year's Day in 1582. Now the beginning of the new year has officially been the 1st of January again. This calendar was gradually taken over by much of the world, most recently Turkey in 1926 and China 1949. So Marble Boy, no one lied, no one deceived anyone here. Humans developed different types of calendars, humans changed it. They tried different variations until they arrived to the current form, the Gregorian calendar, and it works pretty good in my opinion. You can of course live after other calendars such as the Islamic or Hebrew, which by the way still celebrates New Year in March, or the Indian or Chinese calendar, which is one of the most complicated calendar systems of all. You can choose to live after one of these calendars or a complete different one or none of all if you think you have been deceived. But if you want to invite people to your birthday party, you have to use the Gregorian one, or it will be a lonely party. I don't think that I have to mention that the calendar we know still has spring starting in March 20th or 21st with the spring equinox, at least at the northern hemisphere. We just don't celebrate the new year then. Just because the Romans made March at some point to their first month of the year does not mean that it has to be like that forever. By the way, the January makes sense too. Because of the December solstice, the days start to get longer again, means there is more light each day. And with that, I'll end this video. It was long enough. Thanks for watching, bye bye and stay tuned.